Ever since I traumatically believed that I had been kidnapped from my orphanage because nobody bothered to tell me I was adopted, I've been very sensitive to the withholding of basic information. So learning guitar upsets me to no end when I see people go like, oh, you're starting guitar here, just play a few chords, G, then make a C, then a D, and an A minor, and a B minor, and there you go. Just like that, kids. Just like that, because it's so easy to move your fingers around into these weird shapes, right? I think that we kind of do beginners a little bit of a disservice by not understanding how any chord can be any shape all over the neck. So today we're just going to learn the 6 main chords in a super easy key. They're going to be right here. And you'd be like, those aren't chords, those are notes. Well, here we go. 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7. They're the dots on the low E string and the A string. And we're going to turn those into smaller chords that are much easier to play than just kind of going around and making different, shapes with your full hand, okay? Only 2 fingers each. So, first of all, this video is sponsored by Chord. This is a Chord A6 Gold awesome acoustic guitar that is superbly inexpensive. So definitely check that out in the link below. But I want to talk about the 3 main chords that you're probably already learning if you haven't learned them already. G major, C major, and D major. Okay? The 1st, 4th, and 5th chords in the key of G. The key of G is just 7 different notes. And again, we're just going to stick with these 6. You can go one farther if you want to. But again, let's not make things too difficult. These are the notes we're going to turn into chords. And if you try to play that G major chord like this, you'll notice that your middle finger's grabbing the 3rd fret on the E string and your pointer finger's grabbing the 2nd fret on the A string, okay? Now, a lot of people can struggle when they're first starting out, stretching their hand open to get all 6 strings, with maybe like the 3rd fret on the highest string. But we're going to shorten the stroke of this chord, all right? So, whether you're playing with your fingers or a pick or anything, we're just going to try to aim for the lowest 2 strings, just the strings that your fingers are holding down. So you can see that my pick is just getting the E and the A string. The great thing is, if you're not super precise about it, you might get another couple of the strings around there. You might even accidentally kind of mute some of them with your fretting hand. It doesn't matter. All the open strings are in this key. So we can be a little sloppy with it, right? Just like the lady at the adoption agency was sloppy with the paperwork. But we don't have to get into that. I'm pretty much over that at this point. So this is a G chord, all right? Now, if we move it down a string, that's your C chord, okay? I think when you're starting out, it's really a lot better to think about G being this note and this note, a G and a B, even if it's not the whole chord traditionally, just to move it around, because guitar ends up being an instrument of shape, so it's good to start thinking about that early. So here's a G chord, here's a C chord. All right, again, 3rd fret on the A string now, pointer finger, 2nd fret on the D string. Another thing that you'll do when you're starting out a lot is you'll take your hand off the fretboard and then try to reassemble it into a different thing where you have to kind of think of one finger at a time like that. And that takes a lot of dexterity, a lot of practice. So I think it's good right off the bat to start thinking of moving the same shape. Your fingers never need to leave the fretboard. Just slide them down, right? Sometimes that's easier said than done. But now you can just kind of aim for the A and the D string. And even if you hit the E string, the low E string, that's totally fine. That note is still in the chord. Even if you brush up against it with your middle finger to mute it, even better, so we can't hear it. All right? So there's your G chord. There's your C chord. Now D, right? It's like, oh, now I gotta go up here. No! Absolutely not. Let's just take this shape and go 2 frets higher. Okay? So G, C, D, just like that. And again, my root note is wherever my middle finger is for this example. 3E, 3A, 5A, G, C, D. You can play a lot of cool stuff just with that. You can hear some of the open strings getting in there, right? Because again, it doesn't have to be super precise. It can be a little sloppy. If I get those higher strings, I would say it actually kind of sounds better. It adds a little bit to it, right? So this is going to be a different way to play a D chord, in case that's kind of, pushing it. Again, this isn't an excuse not to practice these things, but The point is to see these 6 notes in that key. They're really easy to find because usually they have little dots or inlays on them to signify the odd number frets. 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7. Okay? So we're building a chord, a little mini piece of a chord off of each of them. All right? Now again, even if you're playing with your fingers, you can just kind of maybe thumb and pointer it. A good thing to do would be to maybe go back and forth. Same with the pick. You can practice. And my hand never has to leave the fretboard. And I think that's kind of an important thing to start practicing earlier because, you know, eventually you're going to be moving all your fingers kind of at once. So moving a shape together, even if you kind of have to scoot and then readjust, just get your hand ready for the fireworks coming later. All right? So these are all the major chords in this key. Right now, remember, we said we had the 3rd fret, the 5th fret, and the 7th fret on both strings. Well, let's do something with the other 3 notes. We haven't done anything with the 5th fret and the 7th fret on the E string and the 7th fret on the A string. So we have to do something with these, all right? We're going to turn these into minor chords. This is going to be A, which can be a replacement for A minor, which you may have seen before. The 7th note on the E string is a B. This is a replacement for B minor. And the 7th note on the A string is an E, which you can replace an E minor with. Now, again, E minor is a pretty easy chord in and of itself. We'll talk more about this in a second. But I want to take another shape to really just kind of alter the first shape we did, all right? So let's start with that B minor chord. Let's start with your ring finger on the 7th fret of the low E string. Now remember, when we played a G chord, we had your middle finger and then kind of offset, just diagonal one back, your pointer finger's just chilling, all right? So this makes it a G major, C major, D major. So it would stand to reason that that interval, the space between your middle finger and your pointer finger right now, going down a string back a fret, is what makes something major. If you were to make something minor, again, we would start with that major shape and then just go back, flattening the next note. So a minor chord is the same thing as a major chord, but with a flattened 3rd note. Okay, we don't have to get too much into the numbers. I go over all that stuff on my Patreon if you guys are interested. But basically, I want to try to work on this stretch where we have the 7th fret on the E string, and then your pointer finger is going to grab the 5th fret on the A string. Okay, so this is going to be a B minor representative chord. Now again, that can be a reach for sure, right? Use your pinky if you want. If you've ever seen a power chord, something like this, it's essentially the same reach, but you just switch your fingers back, okay? So this is a minor chord replacement. Do the same thing on the 5th fret to get the A minor, and do the same thing on the 7th fret, so now you have 7A and 5D. Okay, so we can go through 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7, and just put the appropriate shapes on the appropriate notes. So again, 3E is going to be major, 5E minor, 7E minor, 3A major, 5A major, 7A minor, G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor. Okay? So, I think that's a much easier way instead of like playing all these chords like G, A, B, C, D, E. It kind of introduces you to shapes right off the bat. And if you don't have the open strings helping you out and you end up learning the names of the notes on the neck, you can always just move these around. So again, if you know the musical alphabet, the letters A through G, and then sharp, just meaning the one right after it, except for E and B. Again, it's getting a lot. We're talking about music education a lot. There's a lot to learn when you first start. But you can just move it. So here's a G major chord. G sharp. A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F sharp, G. Okay? So, one question you might be having is, well, these aren't really chords. I read somewhere that a chord has to be 3 different notes. That's true. These aren't chords, but they're replacements that you can use to kind of get the vibe of a major or minor chord and just kind of help you out with some of what can be more difficult to kind of like, move your hand around in different shapes like that at the very beginning while your hand is building strength. And again, it's super frustrating at first to try to make a lot of these different chord shapes when you don't have to. You're not taking any shortcuts. You're not cheating at all. You're just getting into a way to play songs a little sooner than maybe if you kind of, just really, really hammer those chord shapes. All right. Again, a good practice session should be a little bit of both. But if you ever see a chord chart, it's like, oh, this is a G, D, C chord progression. You can just use one shape. Plus, it also uses kind of selective picking, where you're just hitting a couple strings and not all of them at the same time, which eventually you're going to become a dynamic guitar player, and that stuff is going to be really important, just kind of having all that stuff. All right? So, anyways, thank you so much for checking this out. Again, thanks again to Chord for sponsoring the video. And if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website. I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you.